So you joined your medicine. Then how long were you in India pursuing medicine? And talk us through your medicine journey. And did you practice in India? And at what point did you transition to the US?
I did not practice medicine in Mumbai as a private practitioner. I did practice 12 months or 1 year of rotating internship where I'm able to work under different physicians in practice in Mumbai and surrounding rural areas. So I got to learn a lot, perform more than most interns would, certainly today. And that experience came very handy when I migrated in 79 to the United States.
Where did you go first? Which part of US did you went in? How was it initial few months until you actually got registered as a US doctor?
So I land at the JFK, John F. Kennedy Airport at New York first, flying from Mumbai. And the customs officer going through my bag found this bag inside of my luggage. And he asked me, what do I have in it? And I said, drugs, because in India, we called medicines drugs. Well, in United States, when you say drugs, that's an entirely different ballgame. The guy just dropped the bag and he called for help, and I had commandos approaching me and find out what else do I have besides the drugs. That sack was taken apart and they wore the gloves and they opened it hoping or expecting to see white powder or I don't know what. And what they found inside was all kinds of different medications.
As you have traveled to a lot of countries, literally 100 countries, tell me which country has the best food, and it convinced me and my listeners that we should try that food. Which food will you pick? Which country has the best food?
I'm going to always put India after this. and and really, even medically speaking, physiologically speaking, nutritionally speaking,
Right.
Indian food is the only food that is complete in the absence of non-vegetarian.
Mm.
So a person can be vegetarian and not eat any non-vegetarian and still have fully balanced nutritional food. And Indian food does that. Almost all other foods need some help from the various sources of non-vegetarian.
What message would you like to leave for listeners, especially the younger generation who just want to achieve success in this world, which is not going to be kind to them?
Absolutely. Everything worthwhile takes time. Everything. You can't become a doctor overnight. You can't become an accountant overnight. You can't go from poverty to riches overnight. Everything worthwhile takes time. Therefore, the power of that foresight, that vision, coupled with the hard work. There is no substitute for hard work that we humans have found yet. So you have got to be driven.
Welcome to Baachu Talk, Equity Matters, a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit and a journey to create an equitable world for all through the power of human leadership stories. Right. welcome to Baachu Talk Equity Matters, the podcast that celebrates the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and most importantly, the sense of belonging through the lens of extraordinary human stories. Today, we have the privilege of hosting Dr. Haresh Mirani, whose journey will leave you in awe and inspire you to embrace life challenges with unwavering determination. Born nearly 8,000 miles away in a radically different culture, Dr. Mirani defied the odds, breaking through countless barriers to reach the United States. From humble beginnings to becoming a successful medical doctor, his life is a testament to the transformative power of resilience and perseverance. Despite facing adversity at every turn, from losing both parents during medical school to surviving a life altering accident, Dr. Mirani has emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. His unwavering commitment to giving back through the Mirani Foundation, donating 50% of his income to uplift the lives of the impoverished, is a shining example of what it means to live life with purpose. In this episode, Dr. Mirani will share his incredible story, offering insights into the power of resilience, the importance of giving back, and the transformative potential of embracing equality and adversity. His journey will inspire you to dream big, push hard, and never give up on your quest to create a more just and equitable world. So sit back and relax and prepare to be inspired by none other than Dr. Haresh Mirani. Welcome, Dr. Mirani, to Baachu Talk Equity Matters.
Thank you so very much, Baskar, for having me on your show. I look forward to spending some time with you this morning.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Doctor. So, Doctor, let's go back to the very beginning. Talk us through where were you born and your early life?
I was born in Mumbai, India in 1952. India had been a free country only for 5 years. So we were still, recovering. And it takes a long time for the nations to achieve freedom and then actually embrace it, feel it, and live it. And I remember being born in a very lower middle class family. My daddy was a clerk, and he had migrated from what became Pakistan in 1947. And we have all seen the pictures of the trains from Pakistan to India carrying tens of thousands of humans per each train, where no part was empty, and some of them had to travel sitting on top of the compartments of the train. My daddy and my mommy were lucky enough to make it. And of course, they got married sometime after they had been in India. And I was born in 1952 in Mumbai.
Brilliant, Dr. Mirani. Thank you for sharing. And as you rightly alluded to, 5 years from independence, India was just coming out from a colonial rule. So not everybody, wealth never got spread. Even now it's, poor still lives poor and rich is rich, as you know. How was the change? How was the early life for you? Do you have any fond or memorable things that you can tell from your early life when you're like maybe 2, 3, all the way up to 10?
Yes. One of the earliest memories I have is when I was 6 years old, and I believe I was in the first standard of the elementary school. And that memory is vivid partly because it was an injury. A motorcycle, his side mirror cut my nose while I was standing for the bus to bring me home after my class. And I fell, and the other people came to my rescue, and I was brought home, and where mommy was there, and she, along with the neighbors, it was a neighborhood community in one building. There were many, many flats. So they all came together, and I was taken care of. And over the next several days, I healed without any ramifications. Of course, I have that tiny little scar on my nose all these years and decades later. to know how precious and fickle the life can be. That was one of my very, very earliest memories. And if I may share one more, right across from our flat was a mithai wala. That means he makes sweets, and he used to start at 4 in the morning. And when I wake up around, 6 or 6:30 to go to school, I will smell that mithai, and bright and early, I wanted to eat that mithai. I had a sweet tooth as a child, and my daddy could not afford the mithai, so many a times I could just smell it and not eat it, and I think that helped me grow up, and knowing that in life one doesn't get everything. You have to have a sense of proportionality, and just the resiliency that it ends up building into one's character. And I'm so glad that my daddy did not give into this child's whims and buy me a mithai every time I wanted. And by the way, mithai is a Hindi term, so it is like a dessert. That would be the closest I can, or a cake I can think of. So, but those were the very early childhood memories around the age of 5 or 6. And then at the age of my 7, which would be 1959, we moved from that place, and Daddy moved into a cooperative housing colony in another part of Mumbai, and very subsidized flats were being sold by some of the philanthropists who were Sindhi to settle the huge Sindhi population that had migrated from Pakistan to Mumbai. And so I saw the power of philanthropy and altruism early on. The neighborliness, the philanthropy, the altruism, it came into my life as a kid. Not necessarily I understood it all at that time, but those little seeds that get planted as a child can turn into giant trees if given the water, the sunshine, and the fertilizer. And that is how my life has worked out. And I am so glad to have gone through some of the hardships that I went through, because they all were needed in my life to have finally arrived at the sweet spot of my life. So it has been quite a journey. I am very happy to share it with you and your clients and others. And I hope that some of it would be inspirational and educational and insightful for youngsters across India and other parts of the world who may feel, how are they going to get out of that poverty, that hardship, that lack of resources? And I hope as we continue to explore my journey, they will see that it is doable if one can keep the nose to the ground and work hard and have that deep faith. Um, Anything is possible.
Well said, Dr. Mirani. I think it's unbelievable how he started. You see, I don't know, like, like, even imagining, like, smelling mithai at 4 a.m. in the morning as a kid, and kind of controlling your desires. That yes, I can't afford on daily basis is not easy, and friend, that would have kind of molded you as a person who you are from all the way there to here. So after that, high school. Let's talk us through high school and your college and stuff, because you did your engineering and your medicine. So talk us through all the way from junior school to high school, and how was the transition from there and from high school to university, because in the 1960s and 70s there weren't many universities and there weren't many higher education opportunities, and it wasn't easy for somebody who's actually coming from your background and from your level of society to penetrate into higher education. Talk us through the battle there, and then we'll continue the conversation.
Wonderful. The school was KJ Khilnani High School, right outside our Navjivan Cooperative Housing Society. So I could literally walk out, and it was the next building. So throughout the school, my grades had to be top notch for us to receive the subsidized fees for the school, and that continued. And Daddy was very determined. I had one brother and one sister, both of them 10 years younger than me. And Daddy had to make choices. He knew that he cannot provide everything to everybody, so he put most of his eggs in my basket. And he thought that if I could educate highly and become successful, then this family can come out of the poverty. That was his game plan. And along that, I received more nutritious food and other things that I needed to continue at the high level in my school and outperform others. I was the only child in the family who had to get up at 4 in the morning every single morning to sit down and read and educate. My brother and sister did not have to. And also, another thing I think was the reason was if everybody got up and sat in their corners and studied, the cost of the electric bill would be beyond his ability to pay. So he could not afford that. So that many things happened where I was, you can call it the chosen one, but it really was a set of circumstances where tough decisions had to be made, and that he made them every day. Um, but at that subsidized rate, I was able to finish my high school. But as I was in the senior year, I would say junior year of school, my daddy decided that engineer is who I was supposed to be since I was excellent at numbers and math. That field needed to go. A study had come in 1966 that said that India had 40,000 engineers that were unemployed. Daddy did not want me to go through such hard education and at the end find out that I won't even have a job guaranteed. So at the last minute, he had me change the field from engineering to medicine. There was no discussion. I was simply told that this is what I am going to do. And that was the end of the discussion, and that massive shift from engineer medicine is how I was put into. And this is, my daddy loved me tremendously, but he had to make tough decisions all his life. And therefore, he knew how to raise a family and he was good at it. He was not a good communicator, but he came from the heart. And that's why I call my daddy my Dutch uncle. Now, some of your folks may not know what a Dutch uncle is, but a Dutch uncle is someone who truly cares for you, but is also willing to put his foot down and tell you what is good for you and what is not good for you. That vernacular Dutch uncle is sort of gone out of style, but I think everybody needs a Dutch uncle. I sure the heck did. So that's exactly what happened. I started reading and educating in biology and botany and zoology and end up getting admission in the pre-medical school when I finished my high school with a very high percentage of score.
Brilliant. Again, I think, as you rightly said, we all need a Dutch uncle in our life, who just, some children are blessed to know exactly what they want in life, but for others, it's the parents and the well-wishers or the relatives or friends who guide them. But I'm glad in this case your father was all along with you in this journey. I mean, like we all hope, we all wish everybody has a Dutch uncle who can guide them. So I'll switch from engineering to medicine, and you're pursuing medicine. How was the journey? And also, as you alluded to, you have to wake up 4 a.m. You are given nutritious food, but your brother and sister doesn't need to go for doesn't need to wake up that early. I'm sure they also were not just let down. They also were gently pushed by your father to pursue whatever they are not. I'm sure that's the case. So you joined your medicine. Then how long were you in India pursuing medicine? And talk us through your medicine journey. And did you practice in India? And at what point did you transition to the US?
Well, after I finished my pre-medical, I got introduced to the medical school at Nair Hospital. Back then, there were only four colleges offering medical training. They were all affiliated with University of Bombay, and only 600 students were admitted each year into the four medical schools combined. So out of 100,000 students who apply, 600 got admitted into the medical school. So the standards were exceedingly harsh. But this again is where my upbringing had prepared me to work very hard and have the focus and the vision and that deep faith within me. All those came together, and I was accepted into the medical school at the University of Bombay with the Nair Hospital. And after I finished that medical school, you are supposed to do 1 year of mandatory flexible internship. And once I finished that, by the way, I must mention that during the schooling, during the many, many years that medical school takes, I did lose both my parents, which was a huge blow to the family because my brother being 9 or 10 years younger than me and my sister being 11 years younger than me. And I was only 24 when my second parent, daddy, did not wake up one morning at a very young age of 53. By the way, my mom, who had passed 4 years earlier, was only 43 when she passed. So we lost our parents at very young ages. And at 24, when daddy did not wake up, I became the parent to two younger brother and sister because they were only 14 and 15, and I was 24. So, fortunately for me, shortly after finishing the medical school, I hit the jackpot number two, and I got married to this wonderful woman, Hannah, who is still a huge part of my life almost 46 years later. By the way, my first jackpot was when I was born under the two of the greatest parents that ever lived. So, as you can see, I have been an extremely lucky person who has hit multiple jackpots already by age 25. I've hit my second jackpot when I got married to this woman, and we both came to the United States in 1979. I did not practice medicine in Mumbai as a private practitioner. I did practice 12 months or 1 year of rotating internship where I'm able to work under different physicians in practice in Mumbai and surrounding rural areas. So I got to learn a lot, perform more than most interns would, certainly today. And that experience came very handy when I migrated in 79 to the United States. So that's where my stay as a resident of India ended, and I've become a United States resident.
What a journey, Dr. Mirani. I'm sorry, when you are at your medical school, you lost your parents, but still you managed to pull it off because most of the Indian families, it's self-funded. Parents make a big influence, and at that very young age, you're losing it, and you also with your brother and sister. Was there any immediate family who were there to support you to finish up your education, or it fall under your own lap as well to look after your brother and sister as well?
Well, when Daddy passed, he had only worked at one company for the entirety of his work life. So he did have some provident fund and gratuity that was allowed to come to where I could finish uh, my medical school as well as the three of us could continue to eat and survive. And those were difficult times, needless to say. But again, I was I call it, I was being led, being fed, and in good stead. There was someone watching over us. So we made it through those tough times. I did have some aunts, my mother's one or two sisters that were helpful in providing guidance more than anything else. Since I wasn't ever a parent until I became a parent to my brother and sister, so I needed a lot of help and hand holding, and those two aunts came very handy. And also, they were helpful to us as Hannah and I migrated to United States because both my brother and sister were still minor and they were taken under their wing. they stayed with my aunts until they acquired the majority and turned 18. So I was placing my brother and sister in safe hands before Hannah and I left for the United States.
Nice. It's not easy because on one end you need to be responsible for your immediate family, and the other end you just need to look for your future as well. So you landed in the States 1979, but coming to the US as an immigrant is not a straightforward journey now. But then we are talking about nearly 50 years ago. Sounds incredibly challenging. And how was it? And also, you graduated in the India. Your medical degree might not be fully valid there. You might need to go through some exams. Or how did you? Where did you go first? Which part of US did you went in? How was it initial few months until you actually got registered as a US doctor?
Um, the first city I entered was St. Louis, Missouri. That's the great Midwest. But before I get to St. Louis, there is a story that I must share, actually, too. Somebody had warned me that simple medicines in United States are very expensive, and therefore you should take some of the medicines with you from India. So being a doctor there, we get a lot of samples and things of that nature. So I had put all my medicines in a plastic or some bag, and that was sitting in the bag in which my clothes was, and as we are migrating. So I land at the JFK, John F. Kennedy Airport at New York first, flying from Mumbai. And the customs officer going through my bag found this bag inside of my luggage. And he asked me, what do I have in it? And I said, drugs, because in India, we called medicines drugs. Well, in United States, when you say drugs, that's an entirely different ballgame. The guy just dropped the bag and he called for help, and I had commandos approaching me and find out what else do I have besides the drugs. That sack was taken apart and they wore the gloves and they opened it hoping or expecting to see white powder or I don't know what. And what they found inside was all kinds of different medications. And that asked me, sir, you mentioned you have drugs. What kind of drugs are these? And I said, well, some of these are over the counter pain medications or antibiotics or some ointments and some lotions, maybe some eye drops and on and on. And they said, but you said you had drugs. I said, yes, these are all drugs. I am a medical doctor. In India, we call medicines drugs. You should have seen that whole environment change from one of something serious to something else. Okay. Well, doctor, we are sorry about all this. Have a wonderful day and a safe flight to St. Louis. That's how I entered the United States. What a welcome that was. I would recommend anybody migrating to know the rules and regulations and even the lingo, because the vernacular is so, so, so different. And the second story I want to share with you is on my flight from New York to St. Louis, my luggage. By the way, in 1979, when you left India, India's financial reserve condition was so terrible that a person could only leave India with $20 per head. So Hannah and I migrated to United States with our clothes and $40 in our pocket. When I landed at St. Louis, my luggage was ripped in the handling or what have you. So the Delta guy was very kind and he wrote me a check for that torn luggage for $40. Now, Bhaskar, I want you to know that this immigrant with a total net worth of $40 had his net worth doubled upon entry in the United States. What an omen. I knew that from here, I am only going up and up. And such has been the story, but yes, my total net worth went from $40 to $80 as soon as I landed in St. Louis. So, then obviously I had to go through multiple examinations that are required of any foreign medical graduate, not just me. The American medical system wants to make sure that foreigners coming from other countries, even though they are doctors, are they comparable to the medical education in the United States. So we are expected to jump through a bunch of hoops, take those many examinations before we are considered equal to the American medical graduate. And all that process takes a couple of years. And my in-laws lived in St. Louis and they did provide us basic help and support and a roof over our head. And I was able to finish all those examinations in next 2 years, but had to work part-time and it was juggling, the balls between that part-time work and studying for 14 hours a day and taking care of other health and other needs. But Hannah was my rock of Gibraltar. She realized that I can't study 14 hours a day and do a job. So she asked me to just focus on my education. And she worked as a nurse's aide, even though she was a BS in chemistry. So she did make a lot of sacrifices and worked at the minimum wage, which at that time was $3.05 an hour. But that was enough to feed the two of us and until I finished my exams. And then I joined into another internship program at St. Louis because my internship in India was not accepted. And therefore, I had to repeat that year of internship. But looking back, I think it was a great learning opportunity. And those 80 hours a week to 110 hours a week of work truly hardened me and toughened me to know that hard work it is going to be. And there has never been a substitute for hard work. So it was all good.
Nice. And during all this time, were you still in Missouri?
I was still in St. Louis, Missouri through the end of my internship. And it was only after I finished that I was able to move away because St. Louis winters can be brutal.
Mm.
And we coming from Mumbai, India to St. Louis was a huge change. And we were ready to move south when I finished my internship in 1984. Sorry, in 1982. And ever since, I've been a Southern boy.
Nice. Thank you. I think, well, I know we are talking your journey of 30, 40 years in like 30 minutes here, Dr. Mirani, and that too, as a migrant myself who left India at the age of 22, similar, it was, you come here for the first 1, 2 years, even the language that you thought which is English, to what's spoken there, to what is totally different. And then you adapt yourself and you start low and you go up. So I continue the journey, Dr. Marani. Okay, you finished your education and now you are a registered doctor. And did you practice in St. Paul's, Missouri, or
St. Louis, Missouri,
in
I
St.
did
Paul?
not practice, but I did move in 1984 to Chattanooga, Tennessee, a lot warmer climate. And the next 2 years of my postgraduate residency training was at the Erlanger Hospital in Chattanooga. And that is where, over the next 2 years, both my sons, Love and Kush, were born healthy, and the family was growing, and we had doubled in size from two to four. All that happened during those 2 years in Chattanooga. It was many, many hours of work. As I said, in a residency back then, they did not have any regulation. So it was not unheard of for a resident to put in 70, 80, 90-hour weeks. Fortunately, the regulations now limit that, I believe, to 60-hour weeks, which I think is humane. But nonetheless, my spirits were high. I knew that I am investing so many years of my life into my own future. And a day will come when all this will be worth it. Uh, and uh, those were the times where you learn how to make do with what you have. And I truly learned that mantra that I've read many of places is, if you don't have what you want what you have. And we all have things in our lives. So, I was happy to have a wonderful spouse and two healthy children. And at the hospital, they fed us. Our residents were fed at no charge. So all that was much needed, because now I had more mouths to feed than when we moved into Chattanooga. So, but those were great years to learn. And I was learning not just the medicine, but I was learning the life itself. And that breadth to one's thinking comes about during those years when you think you're working so hard for, I was making $1,000 a month or working 80-hour weeks. And so that's just the nature of the beast. But that's the investment in one's own self. If I look at it as a salary, it was nothing. But if I look at it as a self investment, then it's a whole lot more. Uh, but in 1984, I finished my residency training, and by the time we had grown fond of Tennessee, so we knew that we are going to stay in Tennessee. And in November of 1984, I found a practice opportunity in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is about 100 miles from Chattanooga. So very similar climate, still warm, southern people, friendly, family town. Of course, Knoxville has grown in the last 40 years by a lot. So I wouldn't call it a small town, but when we moved in 1984, it was a relatively small town. So that's when I started my medical practice.
Yes, again, what a journey. I mean, like coming here, working at nearly, it started with $40 and then moving on, working 80 hours. And then here you are owning your medical practice, which is a huge accomplishment. But can you tell us a bit about uh, more about how was it from being a doctor operating in the US? Was there any specific challenges you faced as a doctor, especially um, Southern America? And talk us through about that journey of settling in as an immigrant in that area.
That's quite an insight. Yes, South at that time was not exactly considered a welcoming place for people who are foreigners. And we did have our fair share of misunderstanding, and I don't know if I want to call it discrimination or racial profiling or simply being two radically different cultures that are trying to adjust, trying to live together. And the funny thing is, when I started my practice in a very small community right outside of Knoxville, I did not realize that I will be the only non-white in 10-mile radius of that medical practice. Only non-white in 10-mile radius. But it's funny. Yes, people had their doubts. They didn't know what to expect, and many of them confused me when my receptionist will say he is an Indian. Many of them thought that I was the Indian from the Cherokee Indian communities that had lived in eastern Tennessee long before the white man got here. The country, India, at that time in that community wasn't exactly known to exist, at least for many people. So many of the people would simply come to my office before they bring their sick child or their sick mother or their sick wife to simply come and see me, simply to meet me, simply to shake my hands, simply to be sure that I am okay as a doctor for his child or his mother or his wife or his loved one or her loved one. So we had many people from the community just come in to simply say hello. And if I am seeing a medical patient inside, then they will wait until I come out, and my nurse will tell me that you have Mr. So and so waiting in the waiting room wanting to say hello. So it was quite an interesting journey. I am sure no such thing happens now. Doctors don't have the time to come out and just meet and greet. If doctor spends reasonable time in the patient room with the patient, he is doing good, right? So, but I knew that I was a foreigner back in those days. And by the way, they called me foreigner. That's just the slang. So anyway, so they simply wanted to meet the foreigner before they actually bring their loved ones to see him. So anyway, but by the same token, once I gained the confidence of that community, and it took about 6 months to a year, my practice tripled from the practice that the previous doctor had in 12 months' time. So these people are also very loyal once they know that they have a competent and sensible and intelligent medical doctor in their community. They went out and did my bidding. I never had to advertise, period, because these patients would do it for me. Um, uh, it took them some time to accept that I do not go to the church for the simple reason that Monday through Saturday, I'm working 10 plus hours a day, and Sunday is one day that I get to see my children who are very little, and I don't have that time to do anything else. So Southern, in South, people are very faith oriented, and for them to accept that their medical doctor does not go to the church was a little mountain to climb. But as I said, once they saw what I am capable of, helping their families, taking care of them when they're sick, and being available. I wasn't working 9 to 5. I was working any hour that my patient needed me. So that did put a lot of strain on my family relations, but I provided my patients with what they needed to gain the trust.
Totally.
And that came in handy for the rest of my life.
Brilliant. Again, as you rightly said, we are settling in a totally new country. And I still remember when I moved into a neighborhood, which is just at the outskirts of where we live at the moment, a lady just came to me and said, "Hey, you are the first black person in our village." And I was like, I was looking at my skin is like, am I black? Okay, if that's what you could relate to me, this will I felt really happy. And the first thing she told me was, "Are you coming to the church this Sunday?" And I didn't want to explain to her that I'm not a Christian, but I did go in because we brought up in a multicultural society where we go to mosque and also the church and stuff. So it didn't mean it for me when I see Jesus is the same as Shiva or it is the same as Allah. So I was there. But as you rightly said, settling into that environment takes time. But once you are in, you are there for the rest of the life. That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, doctor. So you have settled well there. You're just continuing your practice, and then accident happens. Talk us through about that. And also you then made a very conscious decision. You know what? I'm going to keep half my income and I'm going to donate the rest. Also, talk about what was the trigger point for you to make the decision, and then talk about your typical day after, because I knew you did mention you work nearly 10, 12 hours, 6 days a week, but that accident made it different. So talk us through about that as well.
Yes. Before I talk about the accident, one story exemplifies the sacrifices that often immigrants have to make. Since I left early in the morning before my children got up and would often come home after they had been put to bed by their mom Monday through Saturday. So my younger son, when he was growing up and he would be 5 or 6 or 7 or such, he would sometimes see me on Sunday and ask me, where did I go for my vacation that week? It was quite poignant, shocking, eye-opening to think while I was logging 80 plus hours a week at my work, my younger son thinks since he didn't see me all week, therefore I must have been on a vacation because his friends' parents saw them every evening after they come back from work. And all those things made a difference. And I was about to make some changes in my life when my car accident happened. This is 1996, 9th of April. So I had my 28th anniversary just 3 days ago. And it was a massive car accident right on Broadway in Knoxville. But all the physical damage that car accident did, and it did plenty. I have gone through 7 surgeries over last many years as a consequence of my car accident. That was my third jackpot. And I've talked about my 2 jackpots earlier before I left India. And this was my third jackpot, my car accident. Now, bear in mind, when I had the car accident, it was the greatest curse. It's only in the hindsight that I can look back at that and realize what a gift it was. Let me exemplify. I went through the emergency surgeries. My left ankle was shattered, and all that happened. And I had, by that time, established 3 huge medical practices in different parts of Knoxville. So it was almost like a chain of medical practices where I had other doctors and staff helping me with running the practices. All that came to a screeching halt. I was out of commission for several months, post-op complications, serious post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, you name it, and I went through it. Obviously, I was flying so high, and when you crash and burn, all that is to be expected. And I understand that now, and the recovery took a very long time. In the meantime, my practices were not handled well in my absence by the doctors who were running it. And so I ended up closing all my medical practices in the next few years. But I had always been cognizant of where I came from. So my living standard, as my income had grown significantly, did not continue to grow. I still lived a relatively simple life, drove simple cars, lived at a simple place, no multi-million dollar mansions. So I was able to live simply so that the monies could be saved for the children's education, because I knew how expensive education in this country is, where my education almost cost nothing because it was all subsidized because of our low, very low income. Here, the education is very expensive. So I was saving the funds for my children's education and what they might need when they grow up to have their own business, because none of them wanted to be a doctor. So all that came handy because, I was put out of action, forcibly retired at a very, very young age of 43. I'm only 43 years old when all this came tumbling down. But because of being a good student of finances, I had managed my affairs to where we were okay financially. We were not okay spiritually and emotionally and psychologically because of what had happened to this family, but we were okay financially. And as the children grew up, they became serious and good adults. They finished their undergrad and they went and did their job and they have done very well. And that has provided the parent in me the freedom to say, okay, I have done my part. So now I don't need to take care of my two sons. They are well taken care of. But there are many others who still don't have anything. They are where I was when I was 5 and 10 and 15 and 20. They need a little helping hand. They could use some of what I have, and I don't have to worry about my two sons. They're doing well. And that's when this mantra came to my mind that I can live on 50% of my income so that the other 50% can go to people who really, really need it. So that's how that came about. And don't forget, from the childhood, I had experienced the altruism, the philanthropy of others who had the funds to help. So that seed simply germinated, and that made the foundation the Mirani Foundation. As of last 8 years, we do our giving through the Mirani Foundation, and we do not accept a penny from outside sources. All funds are organic, and I derive a lot of pleasure from giving. Yes.
There is always a compelling event, Mirani, that kind of helps us to rethink the priorities in life. And I'm glad that it's really unfortunate this accident happened, but then it also helps you to revalidate how you want to live the rest of your life. And I'm glad it's because of that we are able to meet today, and you are able to serve a lot of people as well. So, but that didn't stop you, even though you had the ankle injury, you continued your journey both as a medical professional, and also you also went on with your foundation. Talk us through, as of today, what's Mirani Foundation has done and your future plans of Mirani Foundation as well.
Several years ago, you know, when you're forcibly retired at such a young age, you're constantly evaluating and reevaluating as to what is the point of all this. And I came to the conclusion that a meaningful life must have three stages: learning, earning, returning. I learned well, became a doctor. I earned well because of my professional success. What about the most important, which is the returning? Because ultimately, we all leave empty handed. We come empty handed, we leave empty handed. So once I realized that I'm going to run out of my days before I run out of my dollars, why not I go ahead and make each day as useful to others as is possible? And that's where that vehicle of Mirani Foundation came about. It's built on three pillars: healthcare, education, and social justice. Needless to say, being a doctor, healthcare is always going to be the most important to me. Education. Education is what gave me freedom. Unfortunately, my brother and sister did not educate themselves, both the parents gone and nobody, you know, be there for them. And they did not educate much, and therefore they did not reach the level of success that I experienced. So education is important. And then the equity. You know, you talked about in your talks about the equity, the social justice. And to me, that's the return, which makes the life complete, a meaningful life. So that's what we are doing. And what I have done, because I have two countries that have given me everything, India and America. So the giving pie, after the small administrative and other expenses and a part-time employee that I have, whatever is left, we split it half and half. I do half my giving in the United States and I do half my giving in India. So that's what I have done for last, well, the Mirani Foundation, MF, is 8 years old, but this is something that we're doing as of last 2 years. So,
Nice.
did that answer your
Oh,
question?
totally, totally. That answered it. Thank you so much, Dr. Mirani. I think we have been talking about your journey so far. So let's just take a stop, and we'll go into what we call the rapid random fire questions round. There's no right or wrong answer, and let's just go. Let's have fun.
Okay, very
Uh,
good.
as you have traveled to a lot of countries, literally 100 countries, tell me which country has the best food, and it convinced me and my listeners that we should try that food. Which food will you pick? Which country has the best food?
Well, I don't know if I am an impartial person here. I'm going to always put India after this. and and really, even medically speaking, physiologically speaking, nutritionally speaking,
Right.
Indian food is the only food that is complete in the absence of non-vegetarian.
Mm,
So a person can be vegetarian and not eat any non-vegetarian and still have fully balanced nutritional food, and Indian food does that. Almost all other foods need some help from the various sources of non-vegetarian.
Thank you for that. So you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro with an artificial ankle. Talk us through about that and what's next. What else are you planning to take?
This was when I was 60 years old and I was sort of lost. I did not know with the disabilities that I had and all the education and, the intellectual thinking and potential. If I was living my life as fully as I could, and somehow or the other, I am simply doing a safari in Kenya and Tanzania for 2 weeks. And as you move from Nairobi, Kenya into the border with Tanzania, epic mountain shows up and come to find out that that is Mount Kilimanjaro. And he seemed like he almost touched and pierced through the clouds in the sky. And it felt like that could be the gateway to heaven. And I decided I want to get to that gateway to heaven. So I told my driver that what would it take to climb that Mount Kilimanjaro? And he said 12 months of hiking practice on mountains 14,000 feet and higher. And I'm like, what? I have never climbed a mountain that's 14,000 feet high or even a fraction that high. The best I had done was climb Mount LeConte here in East Tennessee halfway, and it's only 5,000 feet high. So the highest I had climbed was about 2,500 feet up, and Mount Kilimanjaro is 19,730 feet. So he was almost laughing at me. But it seemed to me that I had to do that. I was put here at this time to do it. So he put me in touch with a company that arranged a crew of 7 people for just this one person on a Sunday, on a 1-day notice, and begins the quest to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And my thinking was, even if I simply set the foot on it, I have accomplished more than I ever had. But I had a wonderful guide, Gilbert. He was very sure that I can do better. So every night when I go to sleep in that little hut, and they have huts to sleep in, nothing more, next morning he will tell me I can do one more day of climbing. And in doing so, 7 days later, I found myself at the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro. And I have had some researchers try to find if there is another case of an artificial ankle at age 60 who has summited Mount Kilimanjaro, and they were unable to find another case. I truly don't think that physically an artificial ankle is capable of doing that. It was simply the spirit, that deep faith that there is more to me than what I see. One can call it God, you can call it spirit, somebody else may have other names for it, but that's what carried me that summit.
Totally. I think, I do climb, and I've been to Mount Everest, just to the base camp and to the Camp One. And, I do trek every year and spend a month or two. But you're right. Nature needs to choose you, Dr. Mirani. If nature decides, I want to be with you, it will give you the path and it will give you the strength and it will take you with it. And if nature decides it's not for you, you could train for months and years. You're going to get some snowstorm or you're going to get something that's beyond your control and you just need to pack your bags and go. So you're blessed. I think it's all the karma that you have been giving and the nature wants to just stay with you. Yes. So let's just talk. Obviously, you got married to a woman you never met, knew, or dated. You might have some imaginary girlfriends when you were growing up. How did you break this news to all your imaginary girlfriends, in your dream? Oh, you know what? I'm now going to marry to this girl. How was the transition?
Well, it's funny. I said in my short bio that when Daddy did not wake up one morning, I'm 24 and I become parent to two kids. And I had never dated any woman. I had never even kissed a woman in my life. Forget about having a sex and having children. I had two now that I was supposed to raise now that daddy is gone. So I did not have to transition from a girlfriend to this woman who I had never seen or met or dated. It was just my first experience ever.
Mm.
And that was a dream that I am still trying not to wake up from 46 years later. She is still my dream girl.
Looks like your imaginary girlfriend came in real life. That's great. So, you mentioned English is your fourth language. Talk us through the other three languages that you know. And you already mentioned how the word drugs that you meant was medicinal drugs created this scenario at the airport. What's other funniest or most embarrassing miscommunications you experienced due to language barriers?
Oh gosh, obviously, and I'm sure you speak several languages. Many people in India speak several languages, so four languages is not a big deal. Of course, in United States we only have one language, so it seems like a big deal, right? But I was born in a Sindhi family, so Sindhi is the first language that I learned, and both my parents were from Sindhi medium all the way. So their Sindhi was excellent, and so I was sent to Sindhi medium. I came out of my high school a graduate of Sindhi medium. English came to me much, much later. But I knew when I came to this country that my Sindhi and Hindi and Marathi, I'm from the state of Maharashtra, it has its own language, Marathi. So those were the first three languages that I learned before the ABCD of English, right? But once you come to United States, all those languages don't amount to anything. It's the language of the land. It's English, and I knew that I have come through all this, and I have to succeed. So I have been diligent in being as fluent in my English language as is possible. Now, obviously, I'm almost 72, so with age, there is certain deterioration of your command on the language. But, my foundation of that was good enough that I continue to communicate in this country without any problems.
Nice. So, can you tell us something unexpected about yourself, some hidden talent or a habit that not many people know about you?
Well, wow. don't know about the hidden talent, but I certainly have a couple of my quotes that I live by. I am the luckiest man alive. I've gotten the best of East and West. Um, and under my name, you may have seen my template where I say living on less is not living small. Living on excess is. I truly embody that in my everyday life affairs. And I think that comes from the childhood where, you know, if you don't have what you want what you have. If my daddy can't afford the mithai for me, my daddy was the most loving father I had. So, you know, wanting what I had. So I have worked around that. And then, of course, you know, the meaningful life, the learning, earning, returning, so important. And the karmic ledger, you know, we understand financial ledger, of course. You know, if you make $1,000 a month, your expenses should be under $1,000 a month. Otherwise, you get in trouble, right? So we know the financial ledger. What we don't pay much attention to is the karmic ledger. Karmic ledger to me is even bigger because it goes beyond what is visible, beyond just this lifetime. It goes through your entire incarnations, whatever. You know, nobody knows for sure, but I'm a firm believer in it. And since I can't pay back the people who made me who I am, I pay it forward to keep my karmic ledger balanced. So that's a big thing for me in my living, a balanced karmic ledger. I would say that would be one of the, I don't know if it's the talent, but it is the discovery.
Well said, and I think it's amazing what you just said now, which means there are so many people. I was about to ask you who are the people who have been most influential in your life, but you already talked about some. But it's good. We can't always go and give back to people who have given us. So let's go forward and give people, and that's a beautiful way of telling that. Thank you for sharing. So let's also look. If your life was made into a movie, who would you want to play your role? And what would do you think should be the title of the movie?
Uh, well, the title needs to be along the two themes that I live by. One is a balanced karmic ledger, and the other one is learn, earn, return. Now, obviously, those in of itself may not make a catchy title for a movie because movies need catchy titles. So, but it needs to be around those two themes. And what was your other question about
Who,
the?
who would you like to play the lead role as you?
That's a good question. Someone mature. Brad Pitt comes to mind. Um, Someone who has been through the vagaries of life, the ups and downs, hasn't had everything given to him on a silver platter. Um, so names truly don't matter as much as someone who has been there and has experience, lived the life in its various forms and shapes and colors.
Nice. Well said. Have you ever had a fanboy moment with anyone that you have met in your line of work?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
Have you ever had a fanboy moment where, oh my God, this person, with anyone, whether in your life or at your work?
Can you explain the fanboy
And
moment?
the moment is you are in awe with someone. Oh, wow, this person. And you look into somebody in your life and you had the opportunity to meet them and you were literally like gobsmacked who they are. Have you ever had any opportunity like you were really inspired by somebody and that person was right in front of you?
I mostly get inspired by people's actions
Mm.
than by their
Physical presence.
uniform that they're wearing.
Well said.
We are all wearing this uniform. We're going
Correct.
to drop it at the end of 70, 80, 90 years, but it is the actions. What kind of life has that person lived? One
Yes.
example that comes to mind is Ted Turner.
Mm,
You
mm.
may have heard of him. He is a founder of CNN, 30, 40 years ago. In 1987, and this is when I'm practicing, working 80 hours plus weeks. But I remember hearing him on a news channel exhorting Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, who were the richest people in the world at that time. Ted Turner was obviously wealthy, but he was not in the league of Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. He is exhorting them both to please donate your billions. You're not going to need them. You're never going to use them. Put them to work by donating to the needy. And there is so much need in this world. And after he shamed them enough, I guess, is when the Bill Gates Foundation, the biggest foundation in the world, was established in early 90s. And then Warren Buffett obviously has donated most of his tens of billions to the charities around the world. Of course, at that time, I did not have much money, but those moments stay with me.
Mm.
And I use them to inspire me in my day to day living. Poor Ted Turner, he went on to develop Alzheimer's disease, and I understand how difficult that problem is. But boy, he enriched the world by exhorting these multi-billionaires to open your purses and your wallets and let them flow to the many needy people, youngsters, students, kids in the world. And I'm glad they're doing it now, and I'm glad I got exposed to Ted Turner's talks and interviews. That inspiration lives on.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Dr. Mirani. So, obviously, you talked about Ted just now, and you also talked about your father, how your Mrs. Hannah was inspirational, your children, and your local community where you moved in. Whether it could be Missouri, or it could be over here in Knoxville. But anybody else, who are the other people who have been influential in your life and career so far? Would you like to share?
Yes, absolutely. I can never forget about my English teacher, Gandhi. His name was Gandhi, by the way. Okay. So it's easy to remember, even though it was decades ago. I'm never going to forget. I was the best student in the class by far, and I would get the most corporal punishments. By the way, back then, corporal punishment in India in 1960s existed. And I would get more beatings than any other student in the class. Uh, and one time, my daddy, because I went home and complained, comes and sits down and talks with my teacher, Gandhi. And I was shocked to hear what Gandhi had to say to my daddy. Gandhi said, "This kid has by far the best potential of the entire class, but he doesn't apply himself 100%. And I am simply trying to get him to do that. My daddy took me home, probably gave me another smacking for complaining about such a great teacher that I had in Gandhi. He said, never again I want to hear you complain about Gandhi to me. So Gandhi was a hell of a teacher for me. He helped me learn the language, which has helped me in this country to be understood clearly, successfully, and then translate it for many others. I am opening a chapter in India. It's called Mirani Foundation India chapter, and we have some volunteers. And one of the things I drill in their head is please be the best in English that you can be. Yes, Hindi is great, Marathi is great, Gujarati is great, but English is it's a world language. So better you do at that, better your chances of success at no matter what you do. So yes, I have had great teachers, and then I try to share that to the next generation. There is one of those volunteers whose story I would like to share because that was one of the questions. Can I do that? Okay. There is a youngster in Mumbai by the name of Raj More, and I'm allowed to say his name. I knew his mother. She was just a house cleaning lady, very poor, back in the 70s and 80s. And mother and son and mother's father, all three of them lived on a staircase. In India, we have buildings with a terrace at the top. And right before the terrace, there is a door that's locked, but there is a tiny little corner there. That's where this family was raised. They grew there. So this kid obviously went through severe hardships his life. So we decided it's a good family. I knew the mother. I bet on that kid. So we supported the family. So they got some food to eat, some clothes to wear. Of course, we couldn't buy them a house. It was too much. Eventually, that kid grows up and becomes an accountant. He finished all that with funds from my family. Even my two sons contributed to his education. He finished his education, became an accountant, and he started a wonderful job. And within a year of starting the job, he was diagnosed with leukemia. What a terrible diagnosis for a 28-year-old young person who is finally coming out of his worst. And now he is looking at that light at the end of the tunnel. Well, chemotherapy was required, but that is extremely expensive. So again, my family came handy. We sent him funds, and as of a year, he is leukemia free. His diagnosis now is that he has succeeded in getting rid of the leukemia, and now he has built a new house that I visited, and it's a beautiful place. Small, but very pretty. So, this is a living, breathing example of investing in a right person for a long time. So,
What has happened?
What an impact there, Dr. Mirani. Thank you for sharing. And I'm sure, for somebody who's lived under the staircase to just come out and see the light and suddenly be diagnosed with a terminal illness and coming out of that, and with you staying all along, I think that's all that's all you want to hear. It's amazing. So as we look into closing the episode, what message would you like to leave for listeners, especially the younger generation, who just want to achieve success in this world, which is not going to be kind to them?
Absolutely. Everything worthwhile takes time. Everything. You can't become a doctor overnight. You can't become an accountant overnight. You can't go from poverty to riches overnight. Everything worthwhile takes time. Therefore, the power of that foresight, that vision, coupled with the hard work. There is no substitute for hard work that we humans have found yet. So you have got to be driven. And everybody needs a Dutch uncle. I will never forget that. Daddy was my Dutch uncle, but everybody needs a Dutch uncle who loves you, but is able to tell you the mistakes you're making, the right path that you're on, the wrong path that you need to avoid. That trusting, loving relation, a Dutch uncle, I think is very crucial for the success of a young person.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manani. It's been an absolute privilege to host you as a guest from here. So if you want to learn more about your work, and where can the listeners find information about you?
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm overjoyed to have spoken and been with you for an hour and a half. And if there is anything that I can do going forward in the future, I will be happy to do that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manani, for joining us today and for the meaningful work that you're doing in this field of education. And as you rightly say, the principles that you live by. I think to all our listeners who have tuned in, please do follow Dr. Haresh Mirani and follow up with his journey, follow up with his work, his foundation, and please continue these conversations. Let's all remember the importance of fostering a sense of belonging for everyone in our communities and working together an equitable society. Until I see you next time, it's Baskar Sundaram signing off. Thank you so much, Dr. Mirani, for joining us today. It's been an absolute privilege and pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much, Dr. Mirani. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Join me on this transformation journey. Subscribe to Baachu Talk Equity Matters today.